Walter's the one getting funky this week. That cross-country travel really G'd you up, huh? Good afternoon and good evening, everybody. Welcome back to Coast-to-Coast EVs, your fortnightly fast charge on electric vehicles and infrastructure, and the first of 2025. Happy New Year, everybody. I'm sure we've all done videos that are wishing you that as well before now, but we are happy to be in 2025, ready to get going and start off another bunch of podcasts on EV infrastructure. Reminder, we are audio only next day. If you want to just listen on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, all of those places where they go into your ears or your stereo instead of your TV screen. And you can catch up with the calendar as soon as I update it, that is, at plugandplayev.com, Coast to Coast EVs show. So we're all kind of back from various revelry trips, whatever we've been up to over the holidays. So we're not on top of a bunch of different things at the moment. Plus, I think everybody is out at the Consumer Electronics Show from the industry side at the moment. So probably a bunch of people still on the show floor there. But good to have you. Glad to get into maybe some of the topics, such as, for example, 2024 EV sales, which are starting to trickle in. As we kind of look at, who's done what in the US market last year, we certainly were having some good conversations around General Motors and their EV lineup, which seems to have borne fruit over the last 6 months, especially, and heading into 2025, looking pretty good with the Chevy Bolt EV on the horizon as well, coming back refreshed. So good stable there. Ford maybe slipping a little bit. Tesla kind of, I don't know, we'll get into this because we have different thoughts, it seems, but maybe a plateau, maybe just a stall. We'll see kind of what we think on that. But Eric, let me start with you down there with a Bolt EUV in the background. Things looking pretty good for America's #2 EV maker as it stands at the moment.
Yeah. So, I mean, based on, I think the numbers that I think we saw for Tesla, right, were Cox Automotive estimates. I think they said it's a little over 600,000 for the year. And then, but coming in right behind that was GM with 114,000 EV sales in 2024, which, if memory serves, I think they are only the second automaker to break 6-digit EV sales in the United States in a single year. And then, and so that's just it's impressive just on its own, but I think it's even more impressive when you consider that was only about 6 months of Chevy Equinox sales, which is their most affordable currently. No Bolt EV in the lineup, and then even with the Chevy Silverado EV, it was really only the RSTs that were on sale. The LT didn't go on sale until right towards the end of the year, and the WTs weren't, I guess, released for non-commercial sales until right toward the end of the year as well. So even if you look it up on, like, at least in my area on cars.com, there are more Silverado RSTs available for sale than there are LTs or WTs. So, the lower cost truck options still really haven't hit the market yet. And then, of course, the big elephant sitting behind me is, without the Bolt EV, like the most affordable GM EV product, they still broke that 100,000 sales mark, which I think, like I said, is impressive. But then the other shout outs that I wanted to give were, despite not having access to a lot of the credits and things like that, Hyundai and Kia still seem to be just doing great. And then Ford, I mean, I know their numbers count the Transit, but I don't know how many Transits they actually sell. Like consumer level products, they're just shy of 100,000, and all they really have is the Lightning and the Mach-E. So they're doing tremendously well for a very limited EV option pool. So, that was my takeaway from those numbers.
Well, that's a great mix of summarizing numbers for us and giving us the kind of standout points. Thank you. So we have, some strong players coming in. You've got, and that's a different kind of mix, right? As you said, Ford has not a whole lot, but some, clearly kind of core products that are really resonating with people. in different categories that are important to it. GM is going across the board, has pretty much a model for everything, especially once the Bolt line comes back. You really get some entry level models there and starts to get its trucks down into a more affordable range. Walter, what did you jump out at the numbers from, at least what we've seen at the moment? What have you taken away from that?
An interesting data plot event occurred where Tesla no longer is outselling everyone else for the first time. So it's 630,000, I think, for Tesla, according to the Cox Automotive, and it's 1.3 million. So if you double the 6.3, it's not 1.3, it's sub that, which means everyone else combined outsold Tesla for the first time. I don't know, since EVs have been a thing. And that event has kind of been foretold for a while. And when you looked at the graphs, it was inevitable that it was going to happen. Tesla's dominance as a 80% market share EV car maker was bound to change as the OEMs put their sights on electric vehicles and started to enter the fray. And sure enough, it has happened. And the only question is, once the dust settles and everyone has their product lines sharpened for their target markets, where is Tesla going to sit? And I don't think they're going to do very well once that Bolt starts to get into Gen Pop, because Tesla has been kind of teasing a low-cost, long-range, fast-charging EV for a while. But as Eric has kind of been a proponent of, it was here 9 years ago. And it might not have been the fastest charging, but heck, it was pretty darn good for charging. And V2 is going to be Ultium Tech, or whatever we want to call the current flavor of the month name for the GM Ultium, or the GM electric vehicle technology. And let's just say it charges at 150 kilowatts, round numbers. The Equinox sold well, but boy, can you imagine what the Bolt is going to do? It's going to be everywhere. Every municipality in the United States is going to be getting them for their ticket caddies and for school districts, and everyone's going to be buying those things. Plus, mom and pop households that need to get an inexpensive car for the kids. What's better than a Bolt? Or if you have a commuter car that you need, or if you're just looking for a low-cost electric vehicle in order to venture out and see what the darn thing can do, it's going to be a utility in the American household. In just, I mean, the amount of addressable market for the Bolt V2, with Tesla delaying in bringing something to market, I think is saying that General Motors is not staying at 110,000 cars per year. It's going up. And as Eric mentioned, the products that have been released so far have been top shelf in their trim levels. So as those trim levels start to come down, and you're looking at 60,000, and I'm wondering, now that we're actually seeing how this response to Tesla's EV dominance is playing out, whether or not General Motors was looking at the cost of batteries and saying, when can we get an affordable EV into the hands of our consumers? And it's not now. It's going to be, and they looked at the graph of the battery costs, and they're like, well, right around here. So let's kind of line up our stars in order to put a affordable EV in the hands of consumers right about here. And by my reckoning, that's middle to the end of this year. And after that, there's really no end in sight about what happened. So when I was looking at the numbers, the first thing that stood out to me was the fact that Tesla's competitors have now arrived, and them combined now are outselling Tesla.
That's something we've kind of watched unfold in Europe. I mean, even prior to the Chinese kind of manufacturers starting to make a big dent in their sales, which was one of the stories that kind of floated across from that side. It wasn't that unexpected to see, as you said. We knew at some point it was going to fall below half of the market being everybody else. It's still a big feather in Tesla's cap that they are anywhere near half the market in a expanding stable of electric vehicles, and some impressive ones with the likes of GM, Hyundai, Kia really starting to push hard on some of these models and different categories that Tesla's maybe not leading in, like the 3-row SUVs, that kind of thing, or at least mid-price three-row SUVs. But I guess where, I'm going to jump to the comments in a minute, get everybody's thoughts, but where does this kind of leave Tesla as the next 12 months, 18, 24 months? The product line, was the big kind of, ripple recently was the Cybertruck. That looks like it's going to probably remain kind of a novelty, high expense product. I mean, they may get down to a more affordable version, but there's a lot more coming from other manufacturers as well in the realm of affordable trucks, so I don't see that particularly spiking. Model 3 has been refreshed already, so the numbers there are starting to stabilize probably. Model Y for me is the biggest potential one, some kind of refresh there. Juniper could really spike some sales for a little bit, but in a market that's got a lot of headwinds ahead of it and starting to look for a lot of competition, where do we see Tesla's role, based on the very limited product roadmap, at least that we know about, that it has for this year?
I mean, I would start by saying that I think we've seen Tesla's EV market share in North America drop by about 20% per year. So it was just like 3 years ago, they represented 85, almost 90% of the new EV sales in North America or in the United States. And I mean, I would argue that that's not a healthy market. If you have a single auto company, with 90% of the sales, I don't think that that's a healthy market. That being said, I actually think that their products, right? They have a couple of products that are kind of long in the tooth, right? You have the Model S and the Model. They have a similar problem to Ford in the sense that they have a limited number of offerings, and some of those offerings are very old at this point. Like you said, there's the refresh of the Model 3, which, based on everything I've seen, the Highland, it's an excellent car, right? It's probably the best EV sedan available right now. And then in terms of the Model Y with the Juniper refresh, like we know that Tesla can build capable EVs, right? They've been sort of the gold standard for overall what an EV is. They've been surpassed in certain areas like charging speed or range or whatnot, but for the total package of an EV, they're sort of hard to beat. But I think the issue for them now is two. One, it's the limited number of offerings, the limited design that they have available to them. And then it's the political aspect of it. You have a CEO, right? You look at all of these other CEOs. Do you know who Mary Barra voted for? Do you know who Jim Farley voted for? Do you know who all of these other auto, executives, do you even know what political party that they've registered under, right? You don't know any of that. And so the moment you put your foot into that political ring, you can become toxic for your brand. Right. Like even if you win over customers that you didn't have before, you're going to at least lose an equal number of them. And that's the headwind that I could see for Tesla moving forward, is you're going to see a lot of people abandon that brand because it's not 2018 or 2019 anymore. There are literally dozens of equally good EV options available from a number of different automakers, without the political baggage, sometimes cheaper, sometimes with a better feature set. And, if I'm being perfectly blunt too, as good as the Highland is, as good as Juniper might be, they're really probably only incrementally better than the outgoing Model 3 or the outgoing Model Y. So, if they haven't sold them already, right? I don't know that this refresh is going to capture as much of a market as Tesla believes it's going to.
Some worth noting as well, they were up in China had a decent chunk there. I think it was up 8 or 9%. So that, you know, in a competitive market there, which is slashing prices, they're holding their own. So the global market, you know, there are things that will still make the money, of course. But obviously we focus on North America, US sales or estimated sales, and that's where we're seeing this kind of, you know, potential for the market to really shake up. And that conversely is even before we see any of that European kind of competition that we've seen with the Chinese brands finding a way in and starting to, you know, put downward pressure on pricing. So there's some interesting times ahead. I don't think the Chinese competition is going to arrive this year, but we know from Europe that it's out there and waiting to attack prices. So yeah, but pricing, on the pricing side, there's a little bit of kind of interest in, with, you know, the new year turning. We've got the EV incentives potentially going away, but before that happens, a lot of new models, the Hyundai Kia brand specifically, you know, getting a lot of full tax credits now that they've done all the reshoring and getting stuff to the US, production, battery materials, all that good stuff. So we could see here, I think we predicted in the last show before the new year, just kind of how this is going to be such a lopsided year potentially, with, you know, a lot front loaded. I'm definitely seeing people picking up a lot of EVs this, you know, over the holiday period. We'll go to Anthony's excellent purchase of a used Bolt for knockdown prices here in the comments in a section. But there's kind of potential here for a lot of sales before things get a little bit harder, right? So there's going to be a lot of focus, I think, on the best deals, how everybody is trying to snap up that last minute tax credit if it does indeed go the way of you know, it's expected to go. So definitely, if you're in the market for an EV, if you're knowing people who are, then start to make those recommendations ASAP, because the best deals may be you know, counterintuitively to most usual cycles in Q1 here. Let's jump to the introductions whilst we're here and get everybody. Good evening to Andy Getch down in Florida. That funky bass line was causing Walter to sway, so he's the dancer today. Welcome and thanks for joining us. Todd Holter, hello, welcome. Sorry for the cold going on here. If it overtakes me, I'll have to hand over to one of you. And that is because of this chilly polar vortex descending on us. Muskegon, Michigan, Silence Do Good, thanks for joining us, even if it is freezing outside. Walter Schultze, pretty sure I've heard of that guy. Volvo as a daily driver, and rumor has it his wife drives a Cadillac Lyriq, which may have gone on some epic road trips recently. We will hear about that. Scott Goslin, good evening from Central Illinois, 2017 OG Bolt, first and finest year. I think Eric will agree. Robert Stillmaker, greetings from Maple Valley, Washington. Hello, thanks for joining us. That new part of the Bolt crew. Happy 2025. Congratulations, Anthony, on your buyback Bolt EV. Raised some surprises. Don't think anyone expected to love a Bolt quite as much as Anthony ended up doing, but wowed the entire family with its efficiency and capabilities. So everybody should at least go in a Bolt once, I just recommend. Jay Donaldson, good evening from Northwest Ohio. Just want to bring this one up again because there are still staunch defenders of the Tesla brand. So thank you, Can't Beat the Brave, for Tesla or nothing. Should have bought a Tesla crew. Appreciate you. Mr. Elderon, good evening from Lancaster, Pennsylvania, 2022 Kia EV6. Welcome. Mark Beringer, Newcastle, Ontario, Canada, not the 51st state. Is that because it's 52nd or 53rd after Greenland and Panama Canal? Does that even count as a state? Yes, apologies in advance, even though I'm not a citizen, for what is about to happen. Let's see. Scott from Atlanta, Georgia, 2024 BMW iX, beautiful ride. Back for a snowstorm this weekend after an 1,800-mile road trip from Atlanta to Key West over the New Year. Excellent. Love to hear people taking their trips in the winter. I know the South is less used to this stuff, but it's definitely getting warped at the moment with some cold temperatures. So everybody be safe and sound out there and crank up the heat. Crazy Postman, we've added the comments already, but good evening, EV people. Thanks for joining us. My good friend up in Maine, Bucksport, may be getting DC fast charging. He's been hammering on the door of EVgo to get some fast charging in, and Revision Energy up there is working on various DC fast charging projects. Searsport is a nearby town that will be getting NEVI sites, so lots of action in his area. Thanks for banging that drum, Stephen. And yes, very busy indeed. Just a reminder, Andy Getch's Fort Myers, Florida, with a Ford Mustang Mach-E and a Smart 4.2. Doug Hill, just a comment there. Welcome. Thanks for joining us. Tesla may shift to more of a supply role. Definitely worth pointing out their Powerwall and battery energy storage business was going great guns last year. Really, probably one of the best solutions on the market, really, Powerwall 3. So not all doom and gloom. If you're looking at the product lineup, you just have to kind of shift to a wider view, I guess, and maybe count robo-taxis in as well. Robert Stillmaker just points out Tesla dropped off the premium vehicle list. You're getting a lot of EVs which are starting to take some of that kind of premium premium technology tag, I guess, was the biggest thing. Although I would argue that, one of the bright spots may be full self-driving. That does seem to be, from what everybody is testing at the moment, one of the bright spots with the Tesla platform really starting to come into its own. Chase Drum at the Grid Connection podcast. Good evening. Thanks for joining us. And just to back up Eric's point, loves his Highland, and I can definitely vouch for Tesla. Getting through the intros here. Emery, sorry, late, no worries. Thank you for joining us in the first place. Good evening. Did you miss anything? Just a dissection of whether or not we believe Tesla will reclaw some of that market share back, or if we think it's now everybody else is really starting to arrive at the party, which seems to be the consensus for the moment. Electrified light vehicles, never understood not having hardware instrument cluster. That is one of my breakpoints. Just kind of said it before we got any of the cars. I've always wanted something in front of me there. It'll be the same reason I wouldn't go for a Volvo EX30. Just I don't like looking the other kind of side of the steering wheel. But there you go. It's one of those things that is either a big deal for you or nobody cares about. RLH Marines, good evening from Savannah, Georgia. A couple more to go here. Thanks for joining us. Enzo Greenridge in a Lucid GT 2022. Another 1,500-mile road trip here. Kissimmee, Florida to Miami, Atlanta, and back. Nothing like a good EV road trip. Could not agree more. And just put a cap on it there. Crazy Postman, full self-driving is magical 98% of the time. And as long as that other 2% isn't crashing you into parked emergency vehicles, then you are in good shape. But it is really good. I've been a naysayer for plenty of time, but I will fully put my hands up the last time I used it. It was excellent, and I'm hoping to use it again with some fraught Boston traffic later this month to see if I can get myself in some trouble. And then hello to Dennis Lyon, who is over in Michigan, I believe. Still, market share is hard to keep when you had the most and few competitors. Yeah, again, it goes back to the point that, you're coming back from a very, very dominant position. And if you've done that for, the better part of a decade, then that's the only way is down to some extent. People are going to try and knock you off that pedestal. But it is to their credit that they have held that for as long as they have.
And if I could chime in there, just very briefly, one thing that also has been circulating around in the tail end of Q4 was the market cap of Tesla compared to other car makers. And they've passed $1 trillion in market cap. So the stock analysts are suggesting that their market share, or at least sales, will continue to increase. And I know there's elements of forecasting and predicting technology stars are going to line up and things like that, but still they're a car company, so they're going to be producing cars. In my personal opinion, although the political affiliation is detrimental, as has been described, and I agree with, it also, I think, opens up conquest sales to people who had not even considered EVs before. When you're having a spokesperson like the president of the United States, or soon to be president of the United States, calling the CEO of the car company a genius, or whatever else he's calling him, it is like free publicity. And I think the people who were voting for Trump, and surely there's a lot of them out there because he won the ticket and the election. Those people are hearing that, and they're going to be looking at Teslas when they would have never even considered them before. So I think although Tesla is going to be losing a lot of their core audience, I think they're going to be gaining a lot of new people that weren't, I don't even think they're thinking of them as EVs anymore. They're just thinking of them as, cars from a revolutionary car company, and, oh, they're electric. Okay. That sounds nice. Let's go ahead and try that out. So my personal opinion is the market cap hitting, going north of $1 trillion is telling for multiple different reasons. And I don't think it's all the speculative aspect of technology stars lining up and the promise of Skynet, which I don't think is ever going to materialize. But I think it has a great deal to do with the conquest sales that are soon to occur in 2025.
Yeah.
It'd be interesting.
Yeah, I was just going to say too, like, just historically though, like as we talk about a contested marketplace though, traditionally no automaker has ever really maintained more than 15-20% at most of the market at any one point in time. So the idea that Tesla could even maintain a 50% market share, it seems far-fetched to me. More than likely they're, in 5 to 10 years, we're going to be looking at Tesla maintaining maybe a 10 to 15% market share in the United States at most, if everything goes right. And they
well, right now, I think
they are. So
they're single-digit market share. If you look at
total, total cars, but yeah, I'm assuming that the slow progress right towards a 100% new car EV marketplace. So.
It's worth stepping back to contextualize. We obviously focus on EVs because that's what we do. But, it's 15.9 million in overall new vehicle sales in the US, and EVs are 1.3 million of that. So we're ticking up gradually. It was 7%-ish in 2023, 8%-ish 2024. And it obviously depends how many, vehicle sales are starting to inch up again. But, it's an ever kind of changing percentage of a market that is somewhere between 15 and 16 million new vehicle sales every year. Used vehicles, whole other topic, lots of potential interest in that kind of market, especially with the depreciation of EVs feeding that. But it's a really interesting kind of seesaw of to and fro.
Well, yeah, and the number that I like to have for people to keep in mind when they're looking at this is the total number of vehicles licensed for road use in the United States is over 300 million. So if you figure we're selling 1.3 million EVs a year right now, that's a 300-year time span to replace all the vehicles. And we know things are going to increase and accelerate, but we have to put that bar out there because, like you said, I think people get way too focused on this 15 million, 20 million new cars a year and forget that there are already 300 million on the road. So,
yeah, and to that point, the acceleration, I know we're talking about vehicle sales, but one thing I think is worth mentioning in China, which can be considered a canary in the coal mine, they were hoping to be 50% new, what do they call it? NEVs by 2035. And they're going to hit it next year, a decade ahead of time, which, this year they're, if you factor in the plug-in hybrids, the BEVs, and the REVs, I think it's a 48% increase year over year. And it just goes to show that once this thing starts taking off, the amount of increase can really be go in fits and spurts, and you could see some very abrupt turn-ups in the adoption curve.
If we have a moment to deviate, Steve, one of the stories that stood out to me at the end of 2024 is China's purchasing or U.S. exports of oil to China was down 46% in 2024. We've very likely already turned the corner on peak oil, and nobody realized it.
Walter sent this. That was a good opportune moment to send me across to peak ice, and it's estimates for 2024. But here we have it, and Walter sent it, so I want to show. So 2017 is often kind of posited as the year that we hit peak combustion engine, and you only see this as we progress. Even if 24 changes a little bit, you've got that big chunk of battery electric.
Correct. Yeah, and never really to start increasing again. It's only going, even if BEVs increase at a slower rate than they have been, they're still increasing, and ICEs are still decreasing, and it's only a matter of time before the inevitable happens.
Yeah, there's clearly no demand for internal combustion engine vehicles. I don't know why the government is shoving them down our throats.
I appreciate, we'll get to this with Boltmas, but I appreciated your take on the broken gas pumps on your various travels and this combustion thing never taking off.
Yeah.
But it's interesting. I mean, that's kind of also speaks to the reporting, because I think one of the New York Times headlines was 25% or a quarter of all vehicles are electric now, and you have to kind of dig into that to find those segmentations of plug-in hybrid, different types of hybrid drivetrain, and then the full battery electric, and that's often a kind of juxtaposition that is used against BEVs to kind of point. It's kind of this degrading kind of or retreating line of defense to say, right, what people that would have called hybrids a poor option 10-15 years ago are now using hybrids as their defense of like, well, full BEV will never work, but hybrids will be the way we can go with a hybrid. That makes sense. Toyota's got the right idea. So it's, although you kind of use it in some ways, it's kind of used to sell electric vehicles and how far we're going with that, it's also used as a kind of, well, combustion is still necessary because hybrid.
But you had a Volt too, Steve. You know this. They used the same exact argument against the Volt 12, 13 years ago. Like, plug-in hybrids are not necessary. They're never going to take off.
Well, so I think as Andrew Lambrecht, who does it, if everyone isn't tuned in already, they should go to the Current Review podcast, and Andrew does with David Say up in Maine. He does a lot of comparisons. He compared the current, Toyota Prius Prime, which is a really good-looking car, to be fair, with the Volt, second generation Volt from 8 years ago, whatever it's been now, and it's still beating out the Prius Prime of today with range. The costs were a little bit similar, but then you have to factor in inflation. But essentially, the Volt, for all intents and purposes, was what Toyota is selling as its best, at least most efficient hybrid and plug-in hybrid option today. It's just kind of a testament to the fact that even those kind of vehicles that were absolutely hammered back then are now kind of way ahead of the time.
Should we talk about the best-selling GM EV, the Honda Prologue?
There you go. That's
so we've joked about we joked about this, like I said, back in the Volt days, where it was like, if the Volt shipped with a Honda badge, they wouldn't be able to build enough of them. Like they wouldn't be able to build enough to meet demand. And GM ultimately had to cancel the Volt program due to a lack of demand. And I know this is anecdotal, but I had a friend who was literally on the fence, knew he wanted a plug-in vehicle of some kind, did not want all electric. And he's like, that Volt, it's amazing. It's a great looking car. I sat in it. It's comfortable. The next week he showed up at work with a plug-in Prius. So
yep. These are the vicissitudes of the market, but it'll be interesting to see what people are defending in 4 or 5 years' time. Actually, it's happening now. If we jump into the kind of Bolt and the used Bolts that people are getting, all of a sudden everyone's like, oh, there's a great, cheap, compact EV that does 95% of the things you want to do. And if we go back 5 years, what was the whipping boy of all the comparisons to Tesla? It was the Chevy Bolt. It's just not a good enough EV. Charges too slow, isn't the right form factor, doesn't look amazing, doesn't get to 0 to 60 in 4 seconds. Not good enough. Now it's,
what the difference is, Steve? It now has access to the supercharger network. That's the difference.
It's blazing fast 250 kilowatt speeds now through magic. All right, let me run to the comments and see if I can find some choice Bolt action. No, I can find the Nissan Ariya though, and we can give that some love. from TK Media. It's still the best value used EV around. Yeah, that's been a lot of people's picks for one of the best deals, and can get one for under 20,000 with the tax credit. Kind of, points to the manufacturers stepping in as well a little bit here. Even if the tax credit kind of goes away, I don't know how much Nissan can afford to do it unless it kind of does make that Faustian pact with Honda, but it does need to. All of these manufacturers will probably need to step in and start taking some hits just to keep the sales rolling. On that point, Silence Dugan asks, will GM and Ford lower prices when the $7,500 subsidy goes away?
Yes.
Yep. We've seen it, right? We've seen it with, I know there's a lease loophole, and Hyundai Kia still found their way to making the EV6 and the Ioniq 5 and 6 sell through that route, but they still knocked it down 7,500 eventually.
Yeah, and when GM lost the 75 for the Lyriq in the, I think it was the beginning of Q2 of 2024, they just dropped the price 7,500.
Yeah. Well, and I'll say this right now, even just looking, it's hard to discern when a dealership is offering a discount and when that discount is actually just the tax credit. So it's like, it's kind of hard to figure out which is going on there. Yeah,
we'll see pretty quickly who's in it for the long haul once assuming once the tax credit goes away, you'll start to see who was, wants to move these units and who's just kind of going to say, well, it was never going to work.
Yeah. Well, and I was also going to, we mentioned the Aria too, just, I don't know if he's in the chat, but Ben's Eco Adventures has his Aria out there. I think he tested it maybe at IONNA, was it?
Yeah.
So,
yeah, but thank you for reminding me. Actually, we need to get on to all of our various travel.
He also did the Tesla Supercharger twice with the area after it got access.
So let's see. We got good news for Eric. I don't know if I sent you this actually, Eric. Electric Era had 7 Nevi sites in Colorado. I think that was the biggest win of Colorado's round. IONNA did get a site as well in Fruita in the west of the state. So not just California getting all that excitement there on the west side.
There's a really popular EE site near me in Tennessee that I'm looking to go to sometime soon once 40 opens, or I could find a way around. But it's in the central part of Tennessee, and it's really been getting a lot of positive Plugshare check-ins.
Well, and I think it's a single charger site, maybe 2 stall near you, Steve, I think.
Yeah, there's one south of the city. I said to Anthony, it was like it just didn't strike me as particularly exciting. I think some of the sites that you've seen, like 7, 8 stalls. I mean, I should check it out just for the giggles of it. But it's in kind of a weird backwater next to a falafel shop, I think, which would actually be a selling point in its favor. But
I could use some falafels,
No, shawarma. Sorry, wrong thing. Wrong retail center.
Even better.
Yeah, I have others though. There's a random one called Electric Fish, which I think I mentioned before, which is a private site that no one's allowed to use in the middle of one of the Cambridge, Somerville kind of suburbs. I want to go and look at that. It's a weird big block unit. Logan GigaHub, I've harassed BP Pulse on social media to tell me when it's opening, and nobody has given me any information yet. So I've got a list starting to grow. What else have we got here? Yes, so here's one to Walter's point. Anthony's Trump supporting family members have got into a 2025 Tesla Model 3 because of that sudden newfound enemy of my enemy is my friend.
I don't know that I've ever seen that collection of words together, boomer, MAGA, mom, but
we're on dangerous political grounds here, but Chase can neutralize it for us a little bit. Tesla definitely consistently tests any press is good press.
And plus has
outdoor peril.
They have the refresh Model 3, which has, as Chase was mentioning, he has one and has that really nice ambient lighting on the inside. It's a really nice car, and they're refreshing the Model Y. So I think 2025 for Tesla could very well be a I don't know if you'd call it a breakout year, but return to positive sales growth, if nothing else.
Yeah. I mean, I just think that their sales might grow, but just seeing how everybody else is primed too. Like I think it's going to be their sales will grow, but I think their market share is going to continue to decrease, and
Agreed.
maybe by a significant margin.
Agreed.
So,
Yeah, and neither. I mean, arguably both are good for the wider EV sector, right? We need competition. Tesla was never going to do it on its own. I think we always said that, and they're part of the company's mission originally was to drag all automakers kicking and screaming into the, for want of a better term, electric era. So
be careful what you wish for.
Yeah, it's happening now. Okay, so I want to move on to our various travels because Walter hasn't had much time, at least with us, to expound on IONNA and Pilot Flying J, and we do want to cover our trips. So Eric took a trip down memory lane with various Boltmas videos.
I have to apologize because I kind of fell down a little bit with work started again promptly right after the new year, and I've been behind, so I have a few more videos to edit and push out. But it's been a nice walk down memory lane for me as well. I kind of forgot some of the things that I used to know.
Yeah, no, I was great. I was how I got into the Bolt in the first place. So for me, it was like those 50 kilowatt EV Go sites were super exciting. Having them every 100 miles or so seemed like a luxury at the time. So here we are in a very different world, charging at 400 kilowatt Alpitronics. Walter, from what your experience is, and then you went on a journey across the country to use 350 kilowatt Pilot Flying J's. If people haven't seen the video, tell us all about it as succinctly as you can, I guess.
Sure. So several things coalesced all at the same time in order to make the trip an easy decision to make. My wife and I were celebrating our 25th anniversary, and we wanted to go somewhere special. We had the Cadillac Lyriq that had free charging on EVgo, including Pilot Flying J, which was getting ready to expire in March. And plus, it's just a great car, so why not go on a road trip somewhere? And thirdly, Pilot Flying J was starting to open up stations along the route that we're going to be traveling to make the trip very easy and full of amenities with stations right off the interstate. So all those things kind of coalesced right around the same time. And we were able to go from North Carolina all the way to, wouldn't call it Western Arizona, but it is in a kind of a corner of the state, so to speak. You have to go past Flagstaff and then cut north for about an hour before you get to Grand Canyon National Park. And once we got there, it turns out that was not an original idea. We were greeted with a line that lasted close to 90 minutes in order to get to a gate clerk. And there was a very angry ranger saying, "Stay in your line." And I was staying in my line, but my line fed into one ticket booth, and all the other lines fanned out into like 5. But I kept thinking about the guy's demeanor, and I'm like, well, I better stay in my line or he's going to shoot me or something. But anyway, once we got there, we had a terrific time and celebrated our 25th anniversary, and then hopped in the car and came home. And instead of coming straight home, my wife diverted her car to where she wanted it to go. And I didn't know that was a thing, but apparently it is. And we ended up in Santa Fe, New Mexico. And we also ended up in Roswell, New Mexico on New Year's Eve, New Year's Day, which was fun. It was kind of a novelty, and much bigger town Roswell is than how I pictured it. I kind of pictured it as a one light kind of rinky-dink town, but it's not. It's a big town. I was talking to one guy New Year's Day morning while we were having breakfast, and apparently it's around 60,000 strong, and it's got a lake. So source of waters are important in New Mexico, and since they have a source of water, it's a population center. But all that traveling was made possible mostly by Pilot Flying J. We did divert to other CPOs along the way, notably Electrify America. And I did cross a Francis Energy station, but I didn't put it into the video because it was such a short stop. It was like 5 minutes, but along 40, we stopped at a Francis Energy. We also stopped at, was it Francis or something on the way into Roswell? It was a different CPO. One Tesla supercharger also on the way back, because through the state of Mississippi, Pilot Flying J hasn't built any, so we stopped at a Tesla supercharger, and it didn't go so well. The charging speeds weren't great, and we got shouted at by someone in a Cybertruck asking us to go, because they're immediately adjacent to the supercharger stalls were Francis Energy stalls. But I pay for membership with the Tesla supercharger, and they're like, why aren't you going over there to those other stalls, sort of thing. And I was trying to say, well, I pay to be a member of the Tesla supercharger network.
I saw your review of that one North Carolina site.
Yeah, I guess I'm famous, right?
Never call my superchargers disgusting.
Or infamous, as the case may be. But well, I got a story there, because this weekend I'm returning my son to school, and I'm going to be stopping by the Tesla supercharger station in Halifax, North Carolina, which has 60 stalls, canopies, squeegees, 24/7 amenities immediately off the interstate. So we're going to see how that puppy scores. I think it's going to be damn near perfect. So hopefully I'll be able to be in good favor again with the Tesla crew out there. But anyway, so the trip did go very well. And I would say the aspect of traveling an electric vehicle on interstates using Pilot Flying J that was most notable was that they are immediately off interstate exits. So you don't have to go hunt down these stations. And as you pull up to them, they're brightly lit, and you don't have to think and look for a pin on a map or anything. It's just right there. As you pull off the interstate, you pull in, you connect to a very fast charger, you go in, you use the facilities that are open 24/7, 365. If you're hungry, there's food right there. Oftentimes they're covered. I'd say 3/4 of the stations we stopped at had canopies. And luckily Santa was nice to me, and I had a drone, so I got some very good drone footage of most of them. Anyway, that was a fairly good assessment of how the trip went, and the Lyriq performed very well. Very comfortable car to travel in. I like the Wi-Fi that it has, where you could do some work while the other person drives, and comfortable seats, and very smooth suspension and things like that. So all in all, it was just really an enjoyable trip.
3 years on, I still miss the Wi-Fi hotspot in the Bolt. My son just burnt through all my data on the one trip I did to New York State. I went to one of the Pilot Flying J's in Rotterdam.
It's unlimited now. You could do as much as you want. All you could eat.
Yeah, it's unlimited, but it slows us. Oh, yours is as well. Well, yeah, I think ours was too. It was AT&T hotspot, and I'm pretty sure it was unlimited.
Yeah. AT&T.
Yeah, unlimited, but it then throttles after you hit a certain threshold. Yeah. So
I still miss it. It's been super useful in those times we had it. So I don't know if I think they may have added it to more current Ioniq 5s, but
well, and I believe the Lyriq is 5G. So Walter was actually able to communicate with the aliens directly in Roswell. So
I had coffee with them. They were just sitting right there at the table.
Got a lot of Roswell fans in the comments, and also David, just to point out, it wasn't him in the cyber. He wasn't doing it. So please don't take that as a reason to go after David in the comments. Walter is beloved, and if anyone messes with him, Anthony is on good authority that he will chase them. So it's not a good idea to mess with Walter in these comments. Let's see. So, go ahead, Eric.
Well, I was just going to ask Walter a couple of questions about his trip, because one of the things that I noticed with our one of two Pilot Flying J's in California that has chargers right now is the interstate fuel signs were already updated to say EV charging. I don't know if you noticed that on the interstates when you were driving. Most of them were marked then already.
Yes, so EV charging, correct. Because the typical Pilot Flying J says Pilot or Flying J, and this says open 24 hours, and that gets replaced with EV charging at the bottom.
Okay, and then the other thing I was going to ask about is, thank you for confirming all the rumors that I've been hearing about how unreliable EVgo is and how their chargers never work. So.
Yeah, I didn't have a single location where I could not charge at the station, and I across the entire country.
So I've actually tracked some of those over the last, especially the Nevi sites in Ohio, and none of them have ever been completely down. There is one in Austinburg, Ohio, that's had some problems, which has still got a plug out, but aside from that, they've all been very close to fully online, and if they weren't fully online, it was one handle that was out. So not even like the kind of scenario that a lot of people say, well, you're stuck with two dispensers and one goes out, then you're sharing, so it's kind of a derated site effectively. Didn't see any of that over the holiday period, which is a time when it's going to be stressed.
Well, and I think even on that I-90 surge, right? They kind of pointed out the one charger that had a cable out because they knew they weren't going to have to be sharing power. So, yeah.
Yep. No, I think these are all starting to add up to a, picture of a fast charging, not network, because it's so many different players now, but that is kind of coming into its own, right? You see a lot less of this, and actually, if anything, near to me, Electrify America's got a bit worse. I'm not sure if it was the holidays, but there have definitely been some sites down, sites with one or two out. But it's not, even Electrify America is kind of stepping up its game to the extent that it is not the nightmare scenario that some people have painted it as. So I think this competition is just simply meaning either everybody raises their game, or you just go somewhere else. This has always been the case. If there was to your experience on the trip, Eric, if you see a gas station out because it's refueling or it's just got lines, then you go to another gas station. It's not like you go on social media and destroy the company. That's what's going to start to happen as you get these 4 or 5 different options at any single exit. You just go to another charging station. It's not going to be the end of the world anymore.
Yeah.
Let's see. So Eric, you did travel a little bit before Christmas, and then you went through the Boltmas. I guess tell us whichever one you want to focus on, really. But tell us the thought process behind the Boltmas videos and kind of what you kind of came away thinking about the current infrastructure versus what you used to travel.
Well, this is all sort of a lead up, and so this is why I say I'm behind. I think I published 5 so far, so I have 3 Boltmas videos left that I have to actually upload. And the reason I figured let's do 8 Boltmas, right? Because days of Boltmas, because this is the 8-year anniversary, and I'm going to this weekend do an 8-year 185,000 plus mile review of the car, which I think is going to be a very interesting one. I'm preaching to the choir here, but I figure a good thumbnail and a little bit of traction, and people might go, "Oh wow, these cars actually last that long," and they do. and you'll be happy to know, Steve, that my hotspot still works. But it's funny because I think that the car has now outlasted the tire pressure monitoring system. Those are actually going out in my tires right now. So
when you do that, you got to throw it away. It's done now.
Yeah. And I'm going to call it now because I'm amenable to the results, but the poll is in. It's been decided. I asked, what I should do for my 8-year 185,000 mile. How should I frame it, right? And I had a few different options, and for a while, the hypermiling was winning out, and I just like the only thing that kept playing in my head was, "Do you really want to hurt me?"
So following semis at 50 miles an hour.
Well, I mean, if I'm going to hypermile, I'm going to do it right, but that means I'm going to be driving for 20 plus hours, and I don't want to be doing that. So it looks like the winner that I'm calling right now is a 1,000-kilometer challenge, the sort of Bjorn Nyland style. And so we'll get to see how an 8-year-old EV does on a 621.4 mile drive, how quickly I can complete it while somewhat staying within the bounds of the legal driving speed limit. So, but yeah, I with the Boltmas though, I just had, my bandwidth to do videos and things like that just ebbed and flowed here, like over time. And I documented basically every long trip that I took in my Bolt EV. Regardless of whether I ended up publishing the video, I still had all of these old videos, all of these old trips cataloged. And I just never had the chance to get around to publishing them or sharing them. And so now what I've done is I've sort of collected some of the ones that stood out to me that I didn't have a chance to publish in the past, that were either special for some reason or another, or gave a particular framing of what it looked like at a certain point in time in the EV charging infrastructure history. And it was interesting even for me to look back and say, oh yeah, that's right. In 2017, these were the only chargers available. In 2019, even in California, we still didn't have any, Electrify America stations open, right? Or not to the extent that we needed them. I guess it would be 2018. And then just when did the I-5 route connecting Southern California and Sacramento actually get completed to the point that you could travel it in a CCS EV? So these are sort of like those interesting stories that I think were missed because of different things that came up in my life at the time, and I wasn't able to publish the video, and I just didn't go back and do it. So, but I think overall it was a nice walk down memory lane, and yeah, it was just kind of interesting to see the landscape change over the years. And it's crazy to think it's been almost 4 years since I've really done a lot of road tripping. I think it was like the second year in, I already had like 120,000 miles on my Bolt EV or something like that, or third year in. So
yeah, battery recall really came in clutch for you. Replaced it just at the right time. I mean, but it's a nice thing to get after you've done all your road trip miles.
Yeah, I think I have only about 25,000 miles on my new battery. So it was replaced at about just under 160,000 miles. So new mileage warranty and new time frame for it. So
I guess I was sort of reminded of some of those trips by the trips I did. I stayed fairly local. It's in western or eastern New York, which is really only 200 miles away from Boston, up to Vermont a little bit. And both of those directions, it used to be, going across from Boston, your first stop would be Albany, and there were 6 EVgo 50 kilowatts around Metro Albany. That was like an oasis at the time. That was always made me think of your trips, because it's like, this is the only place along that route, because I was going to Cleveland, Ohio, where you had those EVgo stations. You had them in Boston proper, and then Albany. Well, there were some on the interstate, I guess, the Mass Pike before they changed. But so that first 200 miles or so was EVgo 50 kilowatt paradise, right through to about 2019, 2020. And after that, it was just a nightmare, a complete mess. Albany to essentially Buffalo, 300 miles or so, was just you couldn't do it. You had to stop overnight. And now it's kind of flipped. I mean, the Massachusetts Turnpike is just a mess. There's really, really bad options. The DOT here thinks that 30 kilowatts shared is a suitable speed for a travel plaza charger. It's just night and day. But then you get to Albany, and everything after that is like 350 kilowatt Apple Green sites. As far as the eye can see, you've got charging in Syracuse, Rochester. All the Evolve New York sites have been complete game changer for that state. I mean, it's just so different to what I was traversing when I was watching your videos early on and going, I don't know where the EVgo go after Albany. There's nowhere for me to charge. So it's just a nice look, both ways, because those trips are obviously formative. You look back to them and think, I don't know how we did it, but I'm glad we did, because now I appreciate what we've got even more. But these kind of, looking at that was a really nice juxtaposition to Walter's trip of like half mile off the interstate, charge at a Pilot Flying J for 30 minutes or whatever, and then back on the interstate, and off we go traveling most of the country. It's just
really not a half mile. I mean, you're talking about a pitching wedge distance.
Yeah. Well, you used to call it slop time, Eric, I think.
Yeah.
The time it took to get to the charge.
I still do.
Still find those unique places where you can't charge. But your new favorite site, Wairika, is the interstate in the background there, isn't it? It's the season sign, and then you see the interstate, I think.
This isn't the background.
No.
Yeah.
No. In the video you did on the Electric Era site, I seem to recall that you could see was it I-5 in the background?
Yeah, I can't recall if you can actually see it, but yeah, it's literally like you are like 200 feet, maybe 300 feet off the freeway. Like you literally pull off, and it's a half roundabout, and it's in the center of that half roundabout basically, and then you're back on the freeway again. So yeah, it's just a ridiculous, and you know, I had it on my mind but then when you mentioned that, it's a different factor too. But one of the videos I showcased that Vacaville Premium Outlets Electrify America, and it was 8 chargers, and they're like, mind blown, 850 kilowatt chargers at one location, right? And we don't even bat our eye at that type of a location anymore. That's just like just another charging site.
You kind of go through Walter's weekly AFDC checks, and you know it's got to be a 20 stall to really be called out as any kind of special mention. If it's any that's kind of old news.
But I mean, even that had been, I had charged there on my very first 500-mile trip up to Northern California, but on the EV Go 50 kilowatt chargers that were just around the corner in that outlet, there's a supercharger just on the other side of that outlet. And as convenient as that might seem, you're still a block off the freeway going one direction and nearly like a half mile off the freeway going the other direction. So it's not even all that convenient of a location. It's just got a bunch of chargers there. So yeah.
Let's see. I wanted to make sure we get to everybody else's road trips as well. They've reported some good stuff in the comments here. Also, just to answer this question quick, definitely not purchasing a 2025 Arctic 5. Not really convinced the upgrades are all that much of an upgrade. Rear wiper is not that important to me. Better navigation system might be. I will test drive one. I'm going to get see what we can get into in the next probably in a month or two here. But January 15th, I'm hoping that will be the Supercharger Access Day. My wife, actually, future road trips, is going to go down with my mother-in-law to do Music, West Virginia, which is not the most easy place to traverse in anything that isn't a Tesla. But if they're going to be towards the end of January, so if they get Tesla,
even with Tesla, I understand one of their primary stations went offline because the Associated Sheets was getting refurbished. So there's big gaps in West Virginia.
I think they're probably either way. Just their routine, their itinerary will take them to a place with destination charging, and this is something I want to get onto this year, is covering level 2 a lot more, just doing a lot more of these, kind of balancing out with DC fast charging projects, but also really covering these level 2 players. Eric, I think you forwarded to me the San Francisco curbside charging kind of units going with It's Electric. So there's some of that I really want to get into. I think it's probably going to be a bridge too far today, but I really want to start focusing on those pretty closely, because I do think those will be transformative. And as we've started to talk about here in this comparison with memory lane versus current road trips, it's night and day. And I think everything is being kind of solved in front of our eyes, even though there's still going to be speed bumps in front of us here.
Yeah, well, and there was one point I know we had talked about, and both you, Steve, and Walter had mentioned this to me as well, I think in response to the Boltmas videos, but it's a real concern that I think we need to be looking at moving forward. Is it's also easy to forget just how efficient the Bolt EV is. Like, people would crap on it all the time in terms of its charging speed, but nobody really ever questioned its efficiency or range, given the fact that it was on a 60 kilowatt hour battery pack. And I have frankly been disappointed in a lot of the new EV offerings that I've seen coming out, right? And I'm not talking about, like, if you're a full-size truck, you're in a completely different category for me. Like that's understandable. But when you're just a passenger sedan, or you're, a family car or a crossover, and you're barely able to maintain 3 miles a kilowatt hour in just normal driving, that's a real efficiency barrier that I think that we need to break for the consumer market, really, because I think that's gonna have huge returns, especially with the prices that we're seeing for public charging now. If you're gonna have an economy car that's an EV, you don't want to be spending 50 to 60 kilowatt hours to go, or 50 to 60 cents per kilowatt hour, knowing that that's only going to get you 3 miles, right? That's kind of a crazy trade-off.
Yeah, and I came back and I watched your videos, Eric, and that really was enlightening. And it made me think of a station I stopped at where I was adjacent to a Hummer with 200 plus kilowatt hour pack, and I was thinking, boy, that person is sucking down a lot of electrons, and it's going to take them a long time. I don't care how fast they're charging; it's still going to take them a long time to suck it in, and then they're going to go and get their 1 mile per kilowatt hour efficiency or whatever they get in the thing and burn through. So it's basically, pick your poison. Are you going to be efficient and have a smaller battery pack, or have a big battery pack and be inefficient? But either way, you're charging right around the same amount of time.
Yeah.
I'd love it this year, and I don't hold out much hope that it will happen. But the loses gravity just takes off, becomes a bestseller in its class, at least for whatever respectable numbers that luxury premium people carrier can post. I don't think it will happen based on the limited reception of the Lucid Air. But there's only a few of them that are focusing on efficiency, or at least delivering on efficiency. Lucid is really the only one that is kind of trumpeting efficiency as its main selling point. I think GM can achieve it. We know Hyundai can do so, but maybe doesn't always prioritize it. It's just something I'd really like to see come back to the fore, is kind of if gas prices are going to equalize and kind of stick where they are, then it needs to be the efficiency of EVs and that you're making best use of the energy that really starts to come to the fore. And that would be a nice selling point to have this year. I don't expect to see it, but I will be pleasantly surprised if we do get it. Yeah. Let's see, road trips. Scott Owens on his road trip used several Pilot Flying J, a couple of Electrify America, and Circle K once. Even tried Florida Power and Light Evolution in Florida. PFJ hands down the best. No real charging issues for the entire trip. Again, kind of you start seeing more and more. 2-3 years ago, would any of these been in the equation other than Electrify America? Pilot Flying J, definitely not. Circle K, I don't think so. FPL, I don't know that well, but I doubt they were particularly well spread out at that point. So you're really starting to see these options come to the fore. And that's even without mentioning Tesla as, massive kind of coverage and option for pretty much the whole country. I think Walter answered Dennis's question in the comments. Let me check with AB here on the EV Go reliability. Kind of has the Francis Energy vibe here of, the older EV Go stations can be a problem. Maybe aren't as well maintained, but the newer ones, that we see.
Yeah, I definitely think it's a hardware issue though, because the old EV Go's that I see that are broken or haven't lasted the test of time are usually BTC power. If you look at their old ABB, the Terra 5.3, the Terra 5.4, those things are, I swear, I think they're bulletproof. Like those things, they've been working since like 2014.
So, well, yeah, so maybe it's not age so much as just the vendor, the hardware selection. To Scott's point here, the Deltas are more in those Pilot Flying J, and although we've got a lot of suburban Deltas here, they've started to really, I think that's the case in most metro areas, California as well. The Delta Electronics kind of the ABA stations are the ones that are going in at those locations. But yeah, I mean, there's some that are just kind of the old stations that are rock solid, even if they aren't as appealing to the eye as some of the newer stations might be.
Yeah.
Let's see. Yoldi Traveler on his last 11,000 miles arrived at one station that was down and just went across the highway to the other charging site. And the kind of this, again, the trip down memory lane, Eric, your point across the years has been I'd rather have several sites that have 4 or 6 chargers than one site that has 20 or 30. So even if we get excited by these so-called charging hubs or whatever we define them as, having just a plethora of 4 or 5 players at these exits would be much more.
Well, and I do think that there's a real risk in having what I would consider like a focal point site, because we saw that early on with the Tesla Kettleman City site that they put in, the first one that they put in Kettleman City, 40 stalls. Again, at the time, everybody's mind was blown. You're never going to see that full. And then immediately the holidays following it, they had literally a line of Teslas a mile long. And why? It's because everybody focused on getting to that site. And once you're there, it's like, well, I'm going to stop here. But everybody else had the same brilliant. It sounds like Walter's experience at the Grand Canyon. Everybody had the same great idea. And so when you put these hubs together, people are going to literally plan their trips around them, saying, well, there's 40 chargers there. It's got to be open. Right. When in actuality, you might have been better stopping 5 miles down the road or 5 miles later. So,
Yeah, and I also think the opening of the supercharger network being a snake oil cure for all the ills of charging has kind of run its course. And in my opinion, although the Tesla supercharger is still the single most active CPO, similar to Tesla losing the position of having sales in excess of everyone else combined, no longer being the case, the supercharger network is slowly starting to erode in similar type of market share just by the sheer number of new CPO players coming into the space. And all of them combined opening up stations is in excess of what the Tesla supercharger team can do, even with their very efficient, low-cost high stall count stations. So is causing there to be a lot more widespread options from varying CPOs. It is causing a bit of a app sprawl, and I know the two of you are very strongly against, and I am too. I mean, I just don't want another app, and how many apps can my phone hold before the damn thing melts?
For me, it's not even just apps, it's also just accounts. How many different companies do I want to have an account signed up with and a credit card listed with them and whatnot?
Well, and some of you have to carry a balance. I'm starting to realize this. I went back to Flow to test one of the stations and realized that I've got $10, maybe $15, $20 on an old Flow account when I've been up to Canada before the pandemic. So these things are just sitting there, and it stayed there. To be fair, I could use it again. But so if these networks continue, but some of them go down, you may just start to lose. $10 here, $15 there. It adds up.
Well, and what is it? Is it I think it's ChargePoint. It might be both IONNA and Mercedes, but it's like a $50 hold. It's like
IONNA's $75.
Oh,
yeah.
Never mind.
What they're doing there is a courtesy to the consumers to help them lose weight by taking away their grocery money for a week. Because I understand it's a $75 hold, and then they hold it for like 3 or 4 days before they release it again. And so that's a mistake right there.
Into the sheets and spending all your money.
Well, but then there's the Hummer EV guy that's like, joke's on you. Well, and I was going to say too, Walter, this it's going to be something that's interesting to track. We're talking about auto sales, consumer sales, but with the CPOs, and I know Tesla walks in both realms, but it's going to be interesting to see because I think a lot of them are publishing their output or their throughput each quarter, so we can start to compare these different networks based on EVgo dispensed 50 gigawatt hours in Q4, Tesla dispensed 130 gigawatt hours in Q1, or whatever the case may be. But we can actually start to compare these charging providers too on a quarterly basis by the actual amount of energy that they're dispensing to their customers.
Yeah, good point. As a way of tracking also market share, because basically that's, how many kilowatt hours you're dispensing is basically your market share.
Exactly. Yeah.
It'd be nice to see that normalized for taking out free accounts, or at least, what they would have spent outside of the free accounts, because I know I'm distorting that with my travel life.
I think the free accounts have to be going away, right, Steve?
It's still getting free offers there. It's changing a bit, so it's a little better. It's not unlimited like the ID4s, or mine is time bound but still unlimited charging. They're starting to do an X amount, so I think like the ID Buzz has 500 kilowatt hours. Then I quite like they're giving you a certain time period of Pass Plus membership, that's quite nice. Lock in a discounted rate and still charge with them afterwards. I think that makes way more sense. But I would like to see the back of actually the local if you look at any time during the daytime at the moment, Electrify America around Greater Boston, always full, constantly full. You cannot get on them even if you were going to, try and use the free plan. You're going to be lining up and wasting more time than it's worth to even try. So it's just one of those things where it really is going to start to, and if that is all free people, then it's really not a great advert for Electrify America. They're not going to make money on the back of all this. As people
that's what Tom Malogny did, right? One time he went to one of those 8-10 stall Electrify Americas, like free charging. Well,
it's tri-state area, right? So it's basically one big metro area. It's just, you're going to get all those people. Even if assuming, the best of it and saying it's not rideshare drivers, everybody is going to be using those in the daytime at least, and even at night now. So yeah, it's got to change. Otherwise, Electrify America is going to be in some dire straits pretty soon once this money runs out. Let me keep on the road trip theme for a little bit, then we'll see what we want to do to close this out. Yoldi Traveler, Ford Mustang Mach-E Rally.
So that is a monster trip right there.
Yeah, that's significant, right? Colorado, Michigan, lots of winter weather in that, I would imagine. Well, Thanksgiving, so I can't remember what the weather was like back there. But only one slow charger over 3,000 miles. That kind of matches yours, right, Walter? A derated charge experience, but
it was an anomaly. It cleaned up. I came back that same way on the way back home, and it was fine at the same charger, which was West Memphis, Arkansas. It was fine.
Right. So we're, let's shout out a channel there. Is it the Arkansas E-Traveler or EV Traveler? We're watching some of his videos.
It is. Yep.
Well worth going to take a look. He's got some coverage of, I think, Mercedes-Benz as well as Pilot Flying J and some good stuff. Worth going to take a look at that. Let's see. Crazy Postman ended up in New Mexico. Saw no aliens. Well, maybe you weren't looking hard enough, because apparently every third person is in a human suit. Tom Palmer, welcome. Don't know if we said hello to you at the start there, but took a 2020 Bolt EV over Christmas from South Dakota to the Tucson area and back. A couple of Tesla superchargers, Electrify America's Little Issue, overnight in Yuma, Arizona, with level 2. Really like that. That's always, again, I want to keep calling this out, these hospitality charges. I think that's how my wife and mother-in-law will do West Virginia, just because they're stopping anyway. And an overnight charge will get them through it, no problem. The DC fast charging in that circumstance makes no difference. It doesn't matter. Although there are some really interesting charges if anyone's going that way. I think Lincoln is getting its, the welding company is getting its Velion chargers, I want to say, at Beckley Travel Plaza. There's some really interesting installs going down there in the south of the state. Doesn't really help my wife's journey because she's coming in from the north, but I think there's some interesting kit going in down there if anyone goes that way.
Okay.
DC America, I think, is doing those installs. Anyway, Lincoln Velion chargers, they look pretty futuristic. Some pretty...
Yeah, we've been waiting on their hardware for a long time, so yeah.
Yeah, they're not the quickest cats out of the gate, but if they're installing across West Virginia, everybody will be using them by virtue of the fact that nobody else is there. Tom shot a bunch of video that didn't turn out well. I've definitely been there. And I think one of your Boltmas videos pointed that out, Eric. Half of it is lost to the granular digital annals.
Yeah.
Let's see, AB says, one big difference between now and 5 years ago, then there would only be one place to charge. If it was broken, you were screwed. Today, lots of redundancy. Exactly. I mean, a horror story on Electrify America was a real horror story. I did that in even, being a decent kind of enthusiast of them. Got stuck in New York that one time. I had to use level 2 charging to kind of limp across the states on my way down to Texas. It's just, that was what it was in the day. There was no other option, and you had to kind of figure it out. But that is not the case anymore, thankfully. Do we have anything else? Oh, here we go for New Hampshire. Raisins, can't wait for that kind of DC FC availability and redundancy to come to New Hampshire. Friend in Arkansas says it's similar. Yeah, I mean, Walter, I guess you can speak more to Arkansas. New Hampshire is notably bad, although if you look at somewhere like the border with Vermont, even there where the EA has been problematic, there's a lot of other options. Some of them are dealerships, so it's not ideal, but they have 80, 100 kilowatt options that just kind of speaks and reinforces Eric's point, look beyond the network that you like or that you have defaulted to. There's always going to be, in most cases, other options, but Arkansas. So
actually not so bad anymore. It used to be Arkansas, Mississippi, Louisiana, Alabama were no-go zones unless you were in a Tesla. It was just not possible to travel in an EV across them. But Alabama has flipped. It's now EV Mecca. It's a great place to go in an EV. And Arkansas is coming on board, but Mississippi and Louisiana are still holdouts. So going through either of those two states is still very difficult in a non-Tesla.
Still the West Virginia of the South, I guess. Grid connections. Chase is looking at every Electrify Expo, trying to decide if you're going to road trip all of them or maybe fly a few. Road trip. That's that decided. Thanks. Just film it so that we can go along. Glad to help. On the efficiency, Dennis has the Chevy Equinox at 2.8 miles per kilowatt hour.
Yeah.
Big Barney points out Model Y near 4 miles per kilowatt hour. I'm going to go and test some Model Y efficiency later this month while my wife's off with the IONNA 5. But yes, I would agree with this. From Crazy Postman, efficiency is mad. It's a big blocky car that does not handle highway as well aerodynamically. Good job for that fast charging. Covers up a lot of inefficiency, but it's definitely, as I've said a few times, I think no great improvement over Bolt range for us, despite having an extra 15 kilowatt hours of battery pack in there.
Yeah. And maybe I'm just being old, but I mean, I just remember so many of the EV options that were available when the Bolt first came out were all 4+ mile per kilowatt hour, easily achievable. The BMW i3 was fairly efficient. The original Hyundai Ioniq was extremely efficient. So yeah, we just don't have those options anymore. Where are they?
Yeah, I think getting more batteries in the car kind of started to be the choice approach. I mean, I remember the Jaguar I-Pace. I can't remember what the battery pack size was, but me thinking, I thought that's going to have monster range because, I went from the Bolt's 4 miles per kilowatt hour and thought, well, if I just times it by whatever that was, 80, 85, it's going to be great. And then it came in at, below the Bolt. That was my first, visceral take on, oh crap, heavy EVs are not going to be, it all makes sense as you start to think about it. It's just like, there's not that same level unless you really make it a win now.
Yeah, all-wheel drive, performance tires. Once you start adding that stuff together, and that was another one that I'm not doing it as a Boltmas, but just a retrospect when Bjorn Nyland came out, and it was a bunch of us testing, and he had like 8 different Model 3 variations. Just seeing the variation in efficiency from Model 3 to Model 3 was crazy. Right, because you had the rear wheel drive, what was it, mid-range or whatever they called the one with the middle pack. It was about as efficient as the original Hyundai Ioniq, but then the performance with performance wheels, all-wheel drive Model 3 was basically identical efficiency to the Bolt EV. Right, so it's like this huge spectrum of efficiencies with this literally the same platform. So.
Let's see, I think I'm way behind my comments here, so I'll get back to as many as we can, but I'm only halfway down the list. So apologies if I cut any off at the end here. Alan Yates has been tracking the Loves Travel Stops project. I don't know what the last one, may have been the 3rd update in the series, but worth going to his channel to check out those, but has had good experiences with Delta chargers at pilot sites. Any issues seem to be software related. I still have a bugbear, if I'm going to call them up on anything, with the copywriting team. It's still, last year I noticed it was Telsa on the somewhere in the instructions, and it still reads you can use a Telsa at this station. So they haven't copy edited that screen in over a year.
They are made in China, so maybe it's the Chinese translators.
And then there was it was 53 cents per kilowatt hour on one screen in Rotterdam, and then the other one said 53 cents per minute. So I was like, someone's not checking this stuff. Get me in, I'll copy edit these things. We'll be fine. Crazy Postman almost threw up. His 2 trigger words are BTC Power and Francis Energy, I believe. let me whiz through here. I'm definitely going to miss some, so I really do apologize.
You could also say "hey" and then the G word around Gracie Postman. It'll wake up all of his lawn robots.
We've traumatized him enough this episode. Scott Owens, Plug and Charge. Yes, this is on my list. I've got a lot of different projects on at the moment. Plug and Charge is high on my list of topics to hit this year. It's going to be a big one for the year, I think. And maybe, Walter, that's worth closing out with the last few minutes with IONNA, because they are focusing on, they've kind of had some of this Plug and Charge in there. We haven't spoken to you until now on your IONNA experience, and obviously your trip subsequently kind of put that in the shade a little bit, but we should close out on what could be one of the bigger charging kind of providers of the year, I think.
Yeah, boy, are they spending money. The whole concept of renting space to put your chargers in, they're going big. They're just buying the property. You know, we'll take that one, we'll take that one, and we'll take that one. And okay, so we need some staff. All right, well, let's just hire a bunch of staff and bring them all in, or we'll partner with someone. And so they definitely have deep pockets. There's no question there. I think the $75 hold is going to be an issue that they need to correct. We're right now in a public beta phase where the pricing hasn't been normalized, but there's a lot of griping right now. I'm seeing on PlugShare about people having $75 holds put on their accounts for multiple days after they show up to an IONNA station. So that's definitely a problem. But Plug and Charge, I did ask Seth Cutler when I was at the Apex Cars and Coffee with Out of Spec. Seth Cutler is the CEO of IONNA, specifically about Plug and Charge as a result of Steve's back and forth with me. That was one of the viewer questions that was submitted that I brought to the Cars and Coffee. And he said all the chargers are Plug and Charge ready. So that's obviously something on their plan. They're just not ready to announce exactly what that means. And right now, the only way of charging it at IONNA during public beta is with a credit card. So I'm guessing once they go live, Plug and Charge will be included, and it will include Plug and Charge for all makes and models.
Okay, we've got to dig into that on a future episode, I think, because there's a lot of different versions out there. One of the things that I've loved about EVgo specifically the last year or so has been that auto charge plus, even if it takes a bit longer to activate. But yeah, I think that's going to be potentially a game changer especially if we roll it out. You know, this won't actually be that quick this year if it does come out, because it was being mooted back in 2018, 2019. But getting it will be, and seamlessly across most models, most charging providers will be a really big win, I think. I think that's about all we've got space for. I would definitely miss some stuff at the end, and I'll try and catch up with that and see if there's anything I need to answer in the comments post facto. Eric, anything you want to kind of leave us with before we close it down for the night?
Yeah, no, I was just going to say, I mean, I'm, as usual, I'm out here in California behind the 8 ball waiting for our state to get out of the way of the people who want to build infrastructure. So, yeah, I'm super excited to see the NEVI Awards finally being called out, at least the first round in California. So we're looking forward to that. Hopefully we get an IONNA here as well. And I was mentioning, I think maybe to Walter, that on one of my recent trips, I was just scouting out all the locations that would be perfect for an IONNA, right? Abandoned buildings, abandoned like restaurants just off the interstate, properties that aren't in use, and their business model, to Walter's point, they're throwing a lot of cash out there. These are properties that used to be successful businesses just off the freeway. They'd be perfect charging locations. So
it changes the lens a little bit, doesn't it? Rather than looking at which parking lot of an existing business may be a good candidate, you start to look at what could rejuvenate an old business that didn't quite make it.
Yeah, exactly.
Alrighty, sweet. Thank you, everybody. Enjoyed just a bit of more freeform banter in this one, and some cats as well. Appreciate you all joining us. Happy New Year to you. We'll be back in 2 weeks' time on a pretty regular schedule now, I hope. And we're open to comments and topics. So plugandplayev@gmail.com. Send them that way. Drop them in the comments of this video, whatever you'd like to see us cover. We will make an effort to get it on deck this year. My voice is running out. Thank you very much, everybody. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Cheers. Cheers, nerds.